Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular monthly meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board. My name is Cynthia Kraus, and I'm currently the chair of this board. I'd like to start by recognizing that Jerry Bernstein is now a regular member, so we're not going to be recognizing her every single meeting anymore because she's now a regular member. You also might know now that we're a smaller group, so this might not end up happening, but you might know, remember that Isabel sent a note out earlier this month mentioning that we had a lot to get through and we were hoping people could stay until 8:30. Is there anybody that can't stay until 8:30? Okay, and then that brings us to the minutes. I'm seeking approval of the July 21st and August 4th minutes by unanimous consent as presented. Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved as presented. That brings us to public comment. Did I forget any other introductory remarks?
No, and I am not seeing anyone logged in to provide public comments.
All right, well, we started late, but we're catching up fast. It's time for regular business, and we'll start with item 4A, the ITS plan objectives. Isabel.
Thank you. Just a second while I share my screen. Okay. Good evening. I am Isabel Diaz, Traffic Signal Operations Engineer, and I will be presenting today about the ITS plan, and in particular about the specifically about the objectives of the ITS plan. Just as an introduction, ITS stands for Intelligent Transportation Systems. ITS is the use of data and technology for traffic management and operation. You recall back in April earlier this year, we presented about the ITS plan, and we received the request from the tab that we include public feedback on the ITS on proposed areas where we could invest in ITS. And in response to that, we have released an ITS community survey. And for that survey, we released that for over about 3 weeks out in our email reach out, and we have received 160 responses for the ITS survey. And we will talk a little bit tonight. We will talk a little bit about the survey results, and we will go over the ITS plan goals. And for each goal, we will list some of the ITS plan objectives. And then at the end, we will have an open discussion for each of the ITS plan goals. The direction that we will be needing tonight is to get the prioritization of the ITS plan objectives. And the reason why we need this is because the next step in the ITS plan will be to provide a list of projects and strategies that will address the ITS objectives. But before we do that, we need to make sure we have our objectives defined. So tonight, the specific questions that we will be asking the tab would be, what are the top 3 transportation technology objectives that the city should address for each of the ITS plan goals? Earlier in this summer, we had released the community survey, and part of the way that we tailor this survey is that we divided ITS areas, and we had asked the community to rank those ITS areas where we should be investing on. And they ranked each of the priorities from highest and to the least important, if you wanna call it that way, to the least important for them, for on their each area. And those areas that we provided to the community were traveler information, public transportation, safety at signals, performance measures, and environmental impacts. And from the results that we received from the community, traveler information was selected as the top priority for most of the responders, with 34% of the responses selecting traveler information as the most important one. Next was safety on signalized intersections, and then performance measures. The two areas that were selected as the least in the rank priority were environmental impact and performance measure. Environmental impact and public transportation. Environmental impact had 5% and public transportation 13% selected it as top priority. We will not go over more details in the community survey results, but just to briefly go through each of the main areas that were selected as the highest priority. Inside traveler information, we have given some options on different ideas of where we could be investing that are related to traveler information. And the one that was selected as the most important, the traveler information data that the public selected as the one that they wanted to have the most was travel times. And in terms of travel times, it's from point A to point B, how much time you will get, it will take to get there. That was selected as the data, the travel information data that the public wanted to have the most. In terms of traffic, of safety at signalized intersection, for that one, it was a little bit interesting because the top two were ranked about the same percentage, which was like 30 over 30 each one, but combined, if we were to combine it, it would be about 70%, and it was related to pedestrian. Safety as signals, but combined between the two of them related to pedestrians. And the two pedestrian issues that were selected at the most important was the pedestrian conflicts at signals, pedestrian and vehicular conflict, and the other was pedestrian visibility. So pedestrian safety was basically the top priority in terms of the safety at signalized intersections. And also for performance measures, the measurement that was selected as the one most important that the city should be investing on or going after was travel time at corridors. Travel times, but the corridors. So we can see a repeatedly interest from the public in travel times. In addition to the community survey, something else that we did to be able to gather the information where our priorities should be was to do internal stakeholder workshops. And for that, we selected key staff members from each department that provided their input on these objectives or needs in terms of technology. And the different departments were public works, information technology, community planning and development, and city administration as well, and communications. After receiving the input from both the community surveys and the internal stakeholder workshops that we did, we had proposed a list of ITS plan goals. And these plan goals are statements that would help prioritize make the priorities for the ITS plan. These 6 plan goals that we have identified include improving safety and security in the transportation system, improving efficiency of the transportation system, provide accurate traveler information, the implementation of cost-efficient ITS infrastructure, integrating ITS projects within the city with regional partners, and monitoring transportation performance measures. If you recall what we have seen from the from the community surveys, these goals go in alignment with what we have seen in the community survey results. To kind of remind what we are going to do, we are going to do an exercise where we will be selecting from each of the goals what are the top 3 transportation technology objectives that the city should address for each to accomplish each of the ITS plan goals. For each of the goals, we will be presenting a list similar to this one, and I will be sharing some papers to each of you, so to try to make it easier, so we have a discussion on, probably we might want to time for each one of them, how much to spend. We can provide discussion on what are your top 3 for each of the goals, and maybe have an open discussion on why are you selecting the top 3. And ideally, we could get a consensus from the tab on the top 3 after hearing from each other why you think those are the top 3 for each. So you have an idea for the goals, as I mentioned, are statements that are going to help us prioritize different projects in the ITS plan, and objectives are ways in which we are going to accomplish each one of those goals.
Just follow up a question.
Yes.
I think I maybe had a mistake in the way I was thinking about this, but we're not prioritizing the goals. The goals of the ITS plan is planning to hit all 6 of those goals.
Not the goals. The ITS plan will
Address all 6.
will attempt to address each one of the goals. Depending on the projects, some of the goals might end up with more projects than the others, and we could they could have more weight, one of the goals, depending on the number of projects we set for them. But what we are going to select are the objectives. The idea is that we can address each of the goals.
Okay. I'm skeptical that we can really hit all the goals, but
we could actually, that was one of the, I was planning on, if we have time, maybe at the end, we can select from the goals what are our top goals that we should, in case we have to prioritize the goals between the projects proposed. But that was, yes, that was an alternative feedback if we get time, the time we could get on the selection of the goals.
okay. So it's
So should I pass these around, or is this mine?
Oh, no, that's.
so. What I suggest that we do is budget 10 minutes per goal, and I think I'm just a big believer in actually writing down so that when you start to hear what other people have to say, you get to remember what it is. And so this is super helpful. To have this in writing, but I think we should just take a couple minutes and some people may have already come prepared with this. I actually spent more of my energy preparing for a discussion about which goal is more important. So I need to think a little harder for just a minute. But let's maybe budget. Let's take 3 minutes maybe to for everyone to just do their own. And I encourage you to write it down. And you're certainly allowed to change from what you write down when you hear others talk about it. But I just think it's helpful to actually commit to paper even temporarily what it is that you think you thought 5 minutes ago. I can sometimes be so heavily persuaded by someone else that I forget what I originally thought. So I think it promotes good discussion, but let's just take a couple minutes for everyone to just write down what they think. And then let's budget 10 minutes per, so maybe starting all time. Myself.
And as we go through the objectives, think about how these objectives, if these objectives are going to accomplish each of the goals.
Cynthia, so that's 3 minutes per goal?
No, I think let's just take, unless we don't think that's enough time, 3 minutes just to go ahead and write down what, for yourself, and then we'll discuss it. We'll budget 10 minutes per goal to discuss it. But if you think that's not enough time to scribble on your paper, then we can address that.
Okay, we are ranking these, or
You're just picking your top three,
That's it.
I think.
The
Is
top
that what
three,
you're-
yes.
yes.
Okay. Not in any kind of ranked order, just, or well.
You can if you want. Extra credit.
Just a comment, I was trying to follow along on the webpage, and I'm not seeing any of the presentation that you have there that I can see on the page.
So it's not showing up on the website.
You're talking about
The presentation that's up on the screen. When I was looking at the presentations on here, I've gone through every presentation, I couldn't find what was on the screen.
this looks familiar to me. Did you guys see this in our materials?
Just in the ITS presentation. So the last link under,
Yes, it's the last one on their ITS plan.
The view presentation.
Yes.
yeah, it's slide 7.
Oh, okay.
And the one that we are showing right now for the goals to improve the safety and security of the transportation system are listed on, each one of them are listed on the papers that I provided.
That was our 3 minutes, but does everybody need a little more time?
Go down all of them, or the first one? All of them, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I thought I was the only one that didn't already go through this in detail, so I thought maybe we'd be faster. So I think I kind of misunderstood the assignment as I was preparing mine.
I think in the meantime, for the record, I should be meeting the goals and objectives quickly. The goal that we are about to have a discussion is the first one, improve the safety and security of the transportation system. And the objectives we have identified to accomplish that goal are reduce crashes impacting all people, walking, biking, driving. Improve emergency response times. Implement and maintain ITS-related technology and strategies that proactively work to prevent incidents from occurring. Reduce the conflict between people using different modes of transportation. Coordinate evacuation strategies and emergency responses with other local and regional agencies. Identify and support redundant networks and services to improve emergency preparedness. And prepare signal timing plans for special events and in emergency scenarios.
Are we supposed to be streaming on the city's YouTube channel right now or not? I guess it's not showing up, so I'm not sure if this is.
No, I don't think
No,
we stream.
not streaming,
Okay,
recording.
Are you finished? How about you, Jerry? How are you doing?
I'm slow.
I got two more, 5 to 6.
I'm still on goal 2. Maybe it's mine.
Well, you don't have to go
I'm on
over
board now,
all
too.
the goals, we're just.
I was
discussing
actually,
Oh, you were,
having him do all of them, because
okay, got it.
Because I was operating on the assumption that most people had already, because we've seen these. And like I said, I thought it was just me that hadn't read them in detail because
No, you're not alone.
Got it.
I was focused one level higher and. But we can maybe just see how it goes. Well, let's take another 2 minutes and then let's start in on them because maybe it would have been better if we had just done them one at a time. It's too much to consume all that at once.
No, I think it's better to do them all at one time.
All right.
That's the right way to go. Just kind of in a mode of moving.
All right, I'm gonna stop timing. Let's just take what it takes.
So maybe in the interest of time, I should read through all of them before.
Into the record?
Yes,
Yes, carry on.
okay.
You just monologue over there.
Yes, I'll go over the second goal that the tab will be discussing. The second goal is improving the efficiency of transportation system. And to improve the efficiency of transportation system, the objectives that were identified are the following. Optimize travel time and enhance reliability.
Can't
Incorporate emerging technologies, prioritizing people, safety, and community benefit. Optimize operations at signals along corridors. Alleviate congestion on arterials and major hotspots. Prioritize transit projects that provide safety, accessibility, and convenience for all users and low-income communities. Improve traffic flow during school drop-off and pickup. Studies to understand impacts of development and construction. Mitigate impacts of roadway closures. Anticipate and plan for future growth. Reduce fuel consumption. Reduce environmental impacts and encourage alternative modes. Deploy infrastructure to meet rising demand for electric vehicles. Improve efficiency of maintenance and operations efforts. Goal number 3, provide accurate traveler information. Objectives for goal number 3 are adapt and automate information to a variety of media used to share traveler information based on needs and tendencies of transportation users. Provide real-time traveler information for all people using the transportation system. Provide real-time road conditions and weather information at key locations with known issues. Support centralized systems that provide the following information: advanced and real-time information about construction activities and work zones, real-time incident information. Coordinate with regional agencies to provide traveler information, integrate city developed information and updates into major routing providers. Examples are Google Maps and Waze. Consider use of existing infrastructure displaying traveler information at travel decision points. Goal number 4, develop and deploy cost-efficient ITS infrastructure. The objectives for goal number 4 are deploy systems that maximize the use of existing infrastructure. Where possible, deploy systems that are integrated with existing ITS infrastructure. Deploy systems that are integrated with future transportation infrastructure improvements. Deploy systems with a high benefit to cost ratio, with emphasis on cost-effective equipment to add the greatest value possible. Create redundant traffic communications to maintain uninterrupted operations. Integrate deployments with existing and ongoing local and regional projects. Coordinate funding opportunities with public and private partners. Deploy sustainable ITS infrastructure that can be maintained long-term. Maintain or replace aging traffic control devices and ITS equipment. Secure ITS infrastructure and other city assets. Goal number 5, integrate city ITS projects with regional partners. The objectives are share infrastructure resources between local and regional agencies, continue to coordinate and integrate projects with other agencies, create and build public and private partnerships for ITS deployment, operations, and maintenance, promote interoperability for systems and devices to effectively manage the system, participate in collaborative opportunities to align with a region-wide ITS vision following the completion of this planning effort. The last goal, goal number 6, monitor transportation performance measures. The objectives for goal number 6 are collect and record transportation data such as traffic volume, speed, loop occupancy, and incident data. Make transportation data accessible between jurisdictions and third parties. Maintain a geographic information system, GIS, database of the transportation infrastructure, including ITS devices. Automate and develop efficient systems for collecting, storing, and analyzing transportation data and performance measures. Leverage collected and third-party data for planning, operational, and safety studies. And make use of robust third-party performance measurement solutions to provide performance measure aggregation and analytics and visualization tools such as dashboards.
Thank you. That was a lot, that's a lot of reading. How are you doing, Jerry?
I'm pretty good.
Okay.
Maybe 3 and 4 I might not be done with, but we're okay.
So let's go ahead and start with goal 1 and just, let's see, how do we, who wants to start?
I guess I'll kick it off. Just looking at the survey and the demographics from that survey, I think there needs to be a realization that it's should be weighted away from what the survey was saying in terms of really building out more multimodal and regional approach to the ITS goals and objectives. For example, I drive my own vehicles was 97% of the responses. And that's not realistic in Issaquah. In Issaquah, it's more like 75% at this point, I believe. And so it's obviously going to be a little bit more tilted. And then the age, I think, is also kind of slanted in terms of 50 to 64 probably does not make up 37% of the population here in Issaquah. And a few other factors here. So I think when we're looking at through the rest of the goals as well, we should be looking at something that makes the transportation network or this ITS plan more regional and then more integrated with other areas as well. And then also more multimodal and more making it safe between the modes of transportation. And so, for goal 1, my top 3 was obviously reduce crashes impacting all people through all modes of transportation, and then implement and maintain ITS-related technology that proactively works to prevent incidents from occurring in the first place. And then the third one I would say is reduce the conflict between people using different modes of transportation. So those are my top 3.
And before we go to the next, I want to say if anyone thinks there is an objective that should be included for a goal, specific objective that should be included, and it's not reflected here, please feel free to propose it.
Go ahead. I can add some comments just to goal 1. When I was reading them, I thought there were only really 3 goals in there. So I felt like there was goal 1, which was reduce crashes impacting all people, walking, biking, driving. And then if you go down to, I'm calling it 1A, you go down to the 3rd bullet, implement and maintain ITS-related technology and strategies that proactively work to prevent incidents from occurring. That's kind of like a sub-goal. And so is the next one below that, reduce the conflict between people using different modes of transportation. That's all basically the same idea. You just want to reduce crashes, and then there's 1A and 1B is ways to do it. And the same thing with 2, I had identify and support redundant networks and services to improve emergency preparedness. And then the one above that, I called it 2A, coordinate evacuation strategies and emergency responses with other local and regional agencies. And then for 3, wait a minute. And then, I think 3, improve emergency response times was also 3. And then 3A was prepare signal timing plans for special events and emergency scenarios. So I felt like there were mainly 3 goals, emergency response, improve emergency response times, reduce crashes, and identify, support redundant networks and services to improve emergency preparedness. So I felt there were like 3 goals there anyway already. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking about that And I'm just trying to, let's note that, put a pin in that, because I want to come back to that, but I want to go ahead and let everybody share what their answers were, and then we can, I think we should talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I find myself aligning with kind of both the directions that Julian and Jerry are going. I agree about how some of these, frankly, I feel like you could almost condense, or they're related to each other. So my first one was reducing crashes impacting all people, walking, biking, driving, etc. Second one, reducing conflict between people using different modes of transportation. You see this as just inherently related. And the third one is improving emergency response times when, unfortunately, if these do happen. So like I see it as like prevention and then addressing it if and when it happens. A close fourth for me was implementing and maintaining ITS-related technology and strategies to practically prevent this. So again, just seeing the themes of prevention and then addressing it when it happens.
What about you, Tom?
I think they're, I agree with what Jerry's saying. I think the reduce crashes and reduce the conflict between people and implement ITS that effectively works to prevent accidents are all the same thing. Improve emergency response times and identify support for preventing emergency preparedness. A little different. I think now, thinking that in another 5 years we're going to have massive forest fires on this side, how do we evacuate downtown and Issaquah, people are on Squaw Mountain to get out here? So I do think that looking down the road, emergency preparedness is important, like how to evacuate people out of a certain area. And then I thought reducing crashes is impacting all people. To me, that takes into account the other two. So that'd be number one, emergency response. Number two, for special events, emergency scenarios. I don't know what that means. Any massive concerts here, so it's not yet. So to me, it's the emergency evacuation and reducing crashes. Three key ones.
Okay, thanks. So just, I checked the first three, but, so reduce crashes impacting all people, improve response times, and maintain ITS-related technology to prevent accidents from occurring. But I do agree, and I think that maybe we should take just a moment. What I'm assuming when I read this is that there's people that make their living working with ITS technology, and they would say to us that there are different, that these different things, while they seem subtle when described in this list form, might lead you to different specifics. And I think maybe we're missing that a little bit. And I suspect, because there is a lot of things that feel really redundant. So maybe what would be useful, if you have an answer for some of why these things, if you think they're not as redundant as they're coming across to us, then that might be useful. And then if not, maybe we just want to get at the essence of what we think is most important. And I think the only one that fell off a little bit at the bottom was the special events. And we do have football games and we have salmon days and we have things, but I think emergency response times and is, and I guess I just assumed that emergency response times could be, that the last one could be taken care of by the number two. So, yeah, I'm a little unclear about what this subtle differences, the meaning behind these subtle differences.
You make that very good point. Oh, sorry.
But I also, I wanted to get back to your opening comment, but I wanted to, what did you just say? What were you going to say?
Oh, I think you make a very good point as far as I wasn't thinking of emergency special events, but Salmon Days is a special event.
Oh, okay.
And so I think there's ITS for everyday preparedness, and then that's a big deal, Salmon Days. So that would be something to be prepared for.
It's sort of like, but I think that what I'm hearing is that kind of fell off in terms of the priority.
Yes.
I mean, we all know
It
it's
would be
coming.
a lower priority because prepare plans for special events would be a lower priority because it doesn't happen that
Right.
often and people can live with it.
It's a huge inconvenience, but it's not
One
a
day.
safety issue or.
And when we're talking about the cost versus benefits.
Exactly,
it's to
yeah,
silo
so that's
all
the
these
only
costs.
one that I feel like is easy, everything else is just a consolidation. And I guess I also just wanna kind of go on the record and say that I do agree with Julian that the community survey is heavily skewed towards drive alone, older people. And so I think it's worth considering, it's worth knowing what those people had to say. But I agree, we have a master mobility plan, we have our safety objectives, we have multimodal objectives, and that, being aware of those comments is useful, but that's not necessarily driving what I think is, what I would respond, and so I would assume everyone would think, use all of the information you have to inform your, whatever it is that you think, and that put the survey in kind of context. But yeah, kind of back to the whole point about how you can share how they're not so easily condensed.
And now we will go to one specific, so just to try to help with examples. And I agree in the sense that some of them can be grouped into like that, but what we are mentioning are similar to goals. Keep in mind that what we are detailing here are objectives. The way that objectives are defined for this purpose are ways in we can accomplish these goals. For example, on the last couple of three, like improving emergency preparedness and emergency scenarios. The last two, the first one we say identify and support redundant networks. What we are saying there is specifically like vamping up our communications network. So it's like having that backup in case one fails. We have that backup that we continue to have the service, and it is aimed to improve emergency preparedness, but we are specifically talking about the way that we are helping with that emergency, which for that example is providing, identifying support the redundant networks, which is like vamping up that backup communication system. When we say prepare signal timing plans, we are specifically talking about the way the way that we are using to accomplish that goal with signal timings, with changing signal timings. And for this one, we are saying it would be not only for emergency preparedness, but also for special events. Coordination of evaluation strategies. We again mentioned the emergency responses, but we are specifically talking about coordinating with other agencies about the evacuation strategies and having that extra communication with other agencies and other jurisdictions, neighbor jurisdictions. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I do think to some extent that is, I think that what we need to talk about is where we would recommend putting the effort as far as trade-offs. And so, for example, improving emergency response times could be a trade-off between reliability of a certain response time. And so redundancy, if reliability is your goal for response times, that would lead you towards redundancy in your technology. If overall emergency response times are too high right now and we want to get them down, then redundancy may not be our number one objective because that would be reliability. And so I think maybe we're struggling a little because it's not presented to us in that language, it's presented to us in words that are maybe just one level down beyond like our expertise. And it's not necessarily being laid out as, do you think this is more important or this is more important with regard to what you're getting with each of these objectives. So like what I just described, like, so redundancy really to me speaks to reliability. So do we think reliability is more important when it comes to emergency response times? Or do we think improving overall emergency response time is more important? And in that case, I would say that the other problem that I'm having a little bit is that I always like to think of this matrix of, is it important and how are we doing? And that helps you figure out where to put your money. So let's say something is really important, but more money or more ITS isn't really going to get us any further. Or let's say something is, it's moderately important, but an investment in ITS can improve it a lot. Or something isn't as high of priority, but boy, just a little goes a long way with technology or something like that. So I think that not knowing how we're performing on our emergency, I think everyone here thinks that emergency response times are important and evacuation is probably really important. And we've been looking at, not being able to see our mountains in the last couple of days. And it's not hard to imagine we could be, like you just said, a forest fire. So, but I don't feel like we're right people to be weighing in on that. So kind of thinking about resetting a little bit, what are we saying about these different choices under goal number one?
And this is just in regards to, we have 5 other categories. So this is just in regards to safety and security of the transportation plan. Think of safety and security. Security to me would be reliability. Is it going to work? What we want it to work. And so is there dollars investments we can do to make sure that it works? And to me, that would be kind of a small investment. The next size investment would be to build it out. The reliability, maybe need, not reliability, response times might be more of a capital investment to build things to get the response times, queue jumps, an extra lane at intersections so vehicles can go around other vehicles that might be parked at an intersection like that, which would be more of an investment to make sure the ITS will work. But the first part, the technology as far as I think the reliability would be key from a safety, from a period of safety and reliability.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at this from a project-based thing, I think we should be focusing on like making sure that we do improve that reliability aspect of our network, and then build on what we have.
So if I were pushed though, knowing how long it's going to take me to get to downtown or to the airport or something like that, for my convenience, I'm not sure I would weigh that reliability at the same level I would the reliability of information that makes sure that there's not conflicts with.
But that's goal number 3, that active travel information.
Right, but we were making some meta comments, and I'm saying I wouldn't apply the reliability to every one of those things. So I thought you were talking about language that's in the goal of. So reliability to me seems like it's really, really important for safety and for emergency, and the reliability of the system that tells me what are we saying? How did you describe that? Optimize real-time information about travel time, which is, of course, that's under efficiency. But
And if I look at the,
I guess you're right. I guess we're talking about liability and it's related to safety.
I was looking at it as thinking about emergency vehicles, emergency response time. So usually when they build a fire station or police station, there's a response time they have to be within 10 minutes of wherever that location they need to get to. So if there's traffic or we develop more and they're not in that 10-minute time frame, and they're 12 minutes, well, how can we use technology to bypass the intersection, to bypass traffic, so they maintain that 10-minute response time without having to build additional emergency ambulance or fire stations, the way that we can use technology to get them to where they need to go, so they can still be within that 2-minute range.
I wanted to highlight this comment that we got a week ago about SR 900, and this kind of ties into the support redundant networks. I guess I'll go further into the other goal, like particularly for goal 4, whatever it is, or goal 5. But could you address this public comment that we got last week about
Plugging into
Washdot? Yeah, plugging to Washdot. Because I would imagine, SR 900 is a big portion of the city's traffic.
Yes, it was, the comment was related to that WashDOT would cooperate in allowing state-controlled lights to be managed with our system. And the thought was for SR 900 and I-90. And that comment is specific in areas, which is something that we could address when we start proposing the projects or strategies.
And so WashDOT usually controls everything 300 feet of the intersection. Part of that is to make sure it doesn't back up on the freeway system. So usually when cities, like when they have HOV ramps, if the HOV ramp on-ramp starts backing up too much, then they'll jump that queue to allow more vehicles onto the freeway so they don't back up the city. So there are some things that they follow as far as relinquishing absolute control of controlling the freeway system. I mean, optimal, the purpose of the lights for a freeway would be to keep the freeway free from and not let vehicles on. You can't do it because of vehicles. But I think it'd be hard for the WashDOT to give up and relinquish control of those lights at the intersection to let the city traffic flow better than might impact the highway system. Although if there were, probably do some agreements if there were emergency like evacuation or something like that, that there'd be a protocol that you could say that if emergency, we're going to take control of these lights for X time to clear out this emergency situation. And that way, that would be another way to work with their traffic management system to control. They would probably still control the lights in the traffic management center, but and so there'd be the communication between the city and WashDOT, but then they could just turn on the lights in a certain direction, which they could control from up and Dayton Avenue to run everything through. To clear out an area they really need to take some kind of emergency. And I'm not sure, I was, based on the experience of what I've done with WashDOT, if that was kind of addressing what you were asking about, how to control the lights.
I think that should be satisfactory for the public comment.
So, I'm supposed to be chairing this meeting, running this meeting, and I'm just a little bit unclear as to how we can best advise as an advisory committee when what we're saying is that we think these are what we think are the best objectives to meet these goals, which I always have trouble with that language because goals and objectives to me are the same. Goals and strategies and tactics are different, but I understand that's how planners talk. And so I know that goal number 1 is improve safety, and underneath it is all what we're calling objectives. So, and you're talking about objectives as being a way to achieve the goal. And I think that the nuance between these is I just don't think this is, I'm not sure how to best use this group, since we don't have all of the knowledge to know like what these different subtleties between the different ones would impact the choices further downstream, I think. Because we're saying improve emergency response times is important, and we're saying we want to have our cake and eat it too, because we want to say coordinate evacuation strategies and emergency responses with other agencies. Well, if you improve response, I mean, we're gravitating towards just lumping those together. And I'm not sure how to be most useful to either the Mobility Infrastructure Committee that's going to talk about this on November 8th, presumably, or to you as the staff, because I think we're just saying if we lump them together, then we have our top three. And I don't think that's that useful. So I guess I'll turn it back to, if anybody has another way of describing this that you think that can get us unstuck here, I'm open to it, or if you have another way to get us unstuck, but I feel like we're just gonna categorize them and give you three, and we're just gonna consolidate them and
Yes,
give
Can
you all
I
three.
can I ask a question, is how these were
Developed.
developed?
Well, that's the other, yeah, I've got several.
I was gonna ask, would it help if we try, I know Jerry, you have mentioned like these could be grouped into three different objectives, or kind of simplifying the language. It would help if we try to get those three, and I wouldn't like to put the words for you, but with these three objectives, or kind of groups that you have
Yeah.
mentioned
If
before.
we reduce them to three objectives, but then Cynthia was saying that she wasn't sure if that was really going to help you. Right?
If we reduce them to three, then it's just a matter of ranking them, right?
Yeah.
Then if we're condensing, like what falls off, then like, is that, whatever falls off, is it important or is it okay that it falls off?
I think we're having trouble understanding the implications of the nuance between them.
And I'm wondering if these are just ideas we're put down, and if we're saying, okay, well, from our opinion, collective opinion, we look at these ideas that we put down, these kind of relate to each other, and these are the ones we think are similar. And so we come up with maybe four of them to combine them, and so we might rank them like this, is what we think effectively is important, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't really agree with the consolidation idea. I mean, I would like to have more of the trade-offs that we were talking about earlier, and having more of a specific idea about what each of these objectives looks like in the real world. Like, if you were to bring up an example project or something like that, or just a blueprint of a project or something like that, and just talking about, what does reduce crashes impacting all people, and then versus reduce the conflict between people using different modes of transportation. How are those different specifically? I think that'll be
The
a little bit
implications
more
of the
useful.
nuance between them, I think. So I think we could do this exercise you're suggesting, but I'm not sure. I think it would just gloss over and leave them just as puzzled with what, like, it's not gonna address, I bet there's meaning behind these that is just a little bit unclear to us.
Yes, and about the thought of providing examples of the projects, it's actually the way we actually want to go through the objectives first, so we can provide projects or strategies to go through the objectives.
Well,
It's not like a proposed project though, it's more of like a blueprint, like
help
What
us
could you-
understand the difference between number 1 and number 4.
Yes.
Oh, you mean, not goal 1?
Not
Well,
goal, objective 1 and
objective
objective, under
Yes.
goal 1, objective 1 and objective 4.
Okay, for the objective one is reducing crashes. We are mentioning the results of the crashes, the number of crashes, it will be reducing the number of crashes. For the number 4, it's reducing the conflicts between the people using different modes of transportation.
Could be barrier assigning separation of curbs or something like that.
So what's the difference
Yeah,
between
but
a conflict
that-
and a crash?
That makes sense.
But wouldn't that be a
And near
similar
misses.
objective? So one would be like the major objective.
We'd want to reduce crashes impacting all people. And so then 4 would be a way to do one, reduce the conflict between people using different modes of transportation. But the objective is to reduce crashes and keep
So-
people safe.
So here's one thing to think about. I can see the difference between the two. There's reduced crashes, okay, everybody can drive 10 miles an hour. So there's enough time to stop and not hit somebody. And so if you reduce the conflicts, you can say, okay, cars are gonna be here, people are gonna be here, you're separated. There's no way you can overcome. So that's, and I mean, this is.
But this
totally
isn't
possible.
capital, this is
We're
like.
talking about technology.
Yeah.
Technological.
Yeah, we
like,
can't-
What would the technology look like, reducing crashes versus reducing conflicts? I think that's something
Yes,
I'm
for
trying
the,
to grapple with.
yes, for the reducing the crashes, that would be, I would have to provide a specific example. I'll think it will be easier for me to start with the conflicts. Back when we were presenting the ITS in April, one of the examples that we provided was a tool to measure the close calls, kind of measure what are, and those are these points of conflict. That was an example of a platform that would be used to we mentioned that Bellevue, the city of Bellevue and Seattle are already testing those technologies. With reducing crashes, that would be something specific. If there's a specific crash that is occurring due to the pedestrian conflict with the vehicular conflict, let's say but this is not like a newest technology, but if we get to specifics, there's a non-protected pedestrian signal that has the signal, and then there's a conflict with the vehicular, and we decide to provide a technology to that signal that would provide the ability of having them both separate as protected. That might not be as much ITS, like really much intelligent, but it's a way in which we can provide specific technology to address a particular type of crashes.
So I think going forward, I think we spent a lot of time on goal 1 so far. But going forward into goal 2 and beyond, getting consensus about or getting an idea of what everyone's supporting, and then having staff explain kind of like what that was specifically like, that would be a good approach, I think.
Well, I'm not sure we've provided any useful information in number 1 yet. Don't want to throw good money after bad, but on the other hand, I don't want to strand an investment here. So, I mean, maybe one question for us would be, it's hard for me to imagine how you couldn't reduce the conflict without reducing crashes, but I could see how if you get really into it, you could decide that conflict is different than crashes. Does everyone think that reducing conflict is the most important? Or do you think reducing crashes is the most
Reducing
important?
crashes
Well,
would be more important.
conflict is upstream.
It's the feeders, conflict.
To me, you just,
Sorry.
no, it's okay to
But
crash.
the goal is to not injure people, keep people safe. And so if they're going to get into a crash situation, you want to prevent that, so that's a key objective.
reduce crashes. Because you don't want people being injured.
I see crashes to me as a, like, that's up to and including a fatality, and conflict to me does not connotate a fatality.
Sure.
It might be, escalated, but like nobody's, maybe up to like an injury, but not death. That's just how I'm picturing it in my mind. That might not be what it means, but so for me, if like, that's gonna give more weight to crashes then.
From what Isabella was explaining about the, like specific technology, when we're talking about technology dollars going into projects, it did seem like reducing the conflict, the upstream thing that we have to do, did seem to have more of a technology-centered idea there. Crashes seems to have more of a hard infrastructure kind of idea. So when we're talking about putting budget into like a capital
I
project.
know, I mean, you can
then-
have flashing, you have a pedestrian and they hit the button and it flashes in 5 ways to Sunday, like, that's
That reduces the
technology.
crash.
Technology, but.
And that would reduce the crash.
That reduces crashes. So,
So
so you're trying to keep people safe.
I'm
That's
trying,
the-
yeah,
Well, at the intersection by the Brown Barrier, I mean, it's got those 2 red lights and no left turns, and people still start trying to run it when their bikes trying to go through.
Yeah.
there was a fatality there a few years
There
back.
was.
Yeah.
There have been multiple.
So there's let's take that one for a minute. So for example, that intersection, how would you reduce a crash versus how would you reduce a conflict? Reducing a conflict might be you put a railroad gate down. Okay, you can't take left turn. That's going to reduce the conflict. Reducing crash, that's one that probably causes me more confusion as far as, because crash has too big of a broad spectrum of what it is as opposed to a conflict. It's a little bit more definable.
That's true.
I think if you reduce conflict, because by nature reduce crash.
How you doing, Chair?
Yeah, not so good. I mean, I'm just trying to, we all have a lot of really good, we've all studied this material, we all have familiar with what we're trying to accomplish here, and we're trying to squeeze out of this group something that's gonna be useful, and I'm really struggling. And so I don't know. I mean, we could talk for an hour about the difference between crash and a conflict, and I'm not sure we would get anywhere. And so I guess maybe we should talk about whether we think this, I mean, if we put them into buckets, one is, safety on a day-to-day basis, and the other is emergency. Do we have to choose between those? I mean, I just.
So if we were to, out of all these, if we were to pick one of them,
That's a good idea.
what would the top one be? And then maybe I was thinking, if we allocate time, okay, we spend enough time on this one, let's go to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And something might spark an idea, come back to one.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if you just pick one, maybe we can start with that, what would be Ray's preference?
I think we might get further by picking one. I think that would be really telling. Why don't we try this? Everybody take 30 seconds and pick their first one.
For all of them or just the first one?
Just number one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not gonna kill ourselves. It's already 7:20.
So no combining, just pick one.
No combining, gotta pick one.
Safety and security of the transportation system.
All right. Who wants to go first? Tom, why don't you go
I'll go
first?
To me, it's improve, maintain and improve emergency response times.
For me, it's probably implement and maintain related technology and strategies that practically work to prevent incidents from occurring.
Reducing crashes again.
You remember the first one?
Yes.
And I'm going with reduced crashes also.
I was gonna go with, the upstream that Julie mentioned, to prevent incidents from occurring, only because I think in my humble, I mean, in my my layperson's opinion, I think it seems like a technology, something technology can do to be more upstream, and that the infrastructure might be more crash related. But at least we've got, now we kind of do have our top three, if we're gonna stick to the assignment. So we have our top three, but we have obviously struggled with not understanding the implications of the nuance between them. So let's go to number two. I'm sorry. Do we have anything else to say about number one? Or do we want to go to number two and just pick our first one and see how that goes as far as an exercise? I feel like we're still learning and my head is still exploding. How can we learn so much and still be, this time it still be so hard?
And why don't we just choose our top one?
That's what I'm saying. I think
Yeah.
that might be more
Yeah.
informative and more useful.
Pick the top one of the two.
Yeah.
And no combining.
Okay,
Even though, well, let's acknowledge that they do feel to us like they are redundant and we are unclear as to the implications of the differences between them. I went last time, so I'll go first this time. You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go with one that I didn't even pick the last time, but if I have to pick one, I'm gonna say number two, incorporate emerging transportation technology, prioritizing people, safety, and community benefit, because it's a technology project. So I think the idea of supporting and working on emerging technologies, let's go all in and go to emerging technologies.
This way this time. I'm reading these and I've kind of used the same words writing reports on it as a consultant. It's like these are made by consultants, like optimize travel time, enhance reliability. So it's just like word, no reports. If I look at the efficiency of the transportation system, I would go for reduce environmental impacts caused by idling vehicles, encouraging alternate modes of transportation.
I chose anticipate and plan for future growth, but Cynthia, the one that you chose is very, very close. I think they get a lot of the same things, but I know we're not supposed to connect. For me, the M&P is supposed to be, the North Star, and I think this encapsulates what the goal is getting at, or what the objective might be.
Jerry?
okay, I chose prioritize transit-friendly projects that provide safety, accessibility, and convenience for all commuters and accommodates lower income communities. And I think it's probably because I'm very transit oriented, maybe, and if we prioritize transit-friendly projects, I was thinking we would be optimizing the use of, we would be alleviating congestion and we'd be optimizing the use of our transportation network. So that's why I chose that.
Personally kind of split, unfortunately, but yeah, I would say prioritize transit-friendly projects. Yeah, at the same time, it would again depend on how much of that is technology focused, because we are looking at technology projects, and so I want to hear more from that. And but generally, since this is technology focused, incorporate emerging transportation technologies. which are not going to induce car demand.
Yes, for the transit-friendly
Which one's
project.
that one, Julie?
Sorry.
Which
Which one?
What are you gonna say?
He added his own.
I added my
words.
own things.
Okay.
As long as these emerging transportation technologies are not inducing or alleviating car demand in that perspective, then I would definitely support incorporating those emerging technologies. But it kind of depends, what kind of transit-friendly projects are we talking about in the technology lens, not our infrastructure?
Like the transit priority, we don't have that in the city yet. On signals, the prioritization of transit buses.
Right.
So that is one
Well, we
way
do-
when we could use technology.
Okay.
Oh, so,
That's fine.
oh,
It really is.
And like when you take a bus and you get off at,
On 900.
come off the freeway, there's a transit queue jump there.
Right.
Get in the right lane, they get a jump up in front of all the other cars.
so, or like the light which in green is the bus
Like
approaches.
exact-
Oh, that's
Just like
what
we do
that
for
means?
emergency similar.
Prioritize transit-friendly projects that provide safety, accessibility, and convenience for all commuters and accommodates lower-income communities. That would be an example of the light turning green for buses.
For buses only.
Is that the one that goes in?
Yes.
Oh, then I change to that.
LA pioneered that with the Olympics when they had the massive bus preemption.
Yeah.
Yeah, bus preemption in that case, yeah, it's definitely like.
Anyone
above
wanna
the
change
others.
their vote?
Well, I like to incorporate emergency transportation technologies too, because that seemed to be all encompassing of improving the efficiency of the transportation system. So I was thinking, just prioritizing transit isn't what we should be doing. We should be prioritizing all modes.
I think this brings up a really good point that's been bugging me a little bit, and it kind of relates to what you just, I should say bugging me, but it's in the back of my mind. And that is that for ITS, this is something I wrote when I was preparing for this meeting. Are we opposed to projects, even though our MMP is our North Star, and even though our MMP prioritizes multimodal, do we feel comfortable investing in IT projects that do help vehicular traffic, not as our overall, all of our dollars and all of our planning and all of the investments in transportation for the city of Issaquah, but just for the ITS system? Or do we really want, is there like an overarching recommendation from this body that says, when you're thinking about ITS and advanced technologies and emerging technology, do we really want to optimize them towards our biggest priorities? Or do we want to optimize them towards that which intelligence and data and so forth tend to be good at? And I think that, yeah, so I think that's kind of an overarching thing that can drive this. Like, if there's something that technology is particularly good at within our list of goals, do we want to do something really well and just be really targeted? Or are we feeling like we want to pick technologies that are going to hit as many of our goals as possible? What if it hits only one or two of them, but it does a great job at that?
So the question I have is, even if we all go to electric vehicles, we're still gonna be a lot of cars.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure if anybody else has ever experienced this, where you're sitting at an intersection and like no one's going anywhere. Like, why isn't anybody going? Because the lights are going through the cycle. To me, that's a point where technology can say, and we can do it now today, like no one moving, no one's in that line. Okay, so we can turn that red and turn this one green. Lagging greens or leading green lights, which is more efficient. And so it could be a real-time evaluation of that, as opposed to pre-programmed, like it's always gonna have to be leading green, which means the green left turn goes first. The lagging green is where left turn is held for some length of time. All through vehicles go on that turn. So we could say, well, if they're doing the left turn, I'm not gonna do leading green. And so using technology to get cars through intersections and through points, to me, that would be a huge. That's why I chose to reduce environmental impacts, because cars are sitting there idling creating pollution because they can't go anywhere because the light hasn't turned. You know, if you improve the intersection flow through, you're reducing the pollution, wear and tear, everything that goes along
Yeah,
with it.
but doesn't the city of Issaquah already have that installed in a lot of places?
No, I think what you are referring to is the signal, the adaptive signal system, and we don't have that.
Yeah, fully actually.
Well, okay, like if we use this for the bus, gets to jump queue, and that then now it improves our public transit system locally. Ideally, that would mean more people would see that, notice something, it makes the news, whatever, and people are like, oh, well, actually, I will, like, if that's, then I don't have a problem, but people aren't taking public transportation because it's just not moving as fast as they needed to get to where they want to go. But suddenly if it is that not an incentive? So,
Well, when we're talking about, for example, SR 900, and during the 8 o'clock rush to west, when you have all the cars bunched up, just in the general lanes, and then if you enable that bus, the queue jumping light for the buses and for carpools, it's going to incentivize us to that form of transportation, of course, and just make it easier for everyone. And so that's kind of the focus on the multimodal comes from. So, because if you enhance the ability for that kind of mass transportation, that means there will be more of a shift, and it's going to make it easier to get around in general. So that's where I think our technology solutions would be oriented towards. But of course, it'd be nice to have that, when you're driving around in the middle of the night and you're waiting at a light for a couple minutes, yeah, of course. But I think our investments should be going, towards enhancing that ability for people to get off.
So I do think we met the assignment. I think we picked a top three by just everyone picking their top one, and a couple of people had a 1.5. So I think in that way, I don't think we've answered or gotten any consensus on whether we want to use ITS generally to whatever it's best at, like turning the light at 10 o'clock at night when I'm in my car by myself. If that's really a good use of technology, then should we be doing it, regardless of how it stacks up against our priorities? And I'd like to maybe table that for a minute, and go through and do what we are still taking too long, but we did a lot better on goal 2. So maybe we could try goal 3 if nobody objects to moving on. Because we did, by going and picking one, we've given you a top 3-ish, and then some insight as to why we think that.
And Isabel, you're writing these down.
It's also being recorded.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I'll go through the recording as well.
Okay.
So we kind of have an idea.
I've been scribbling them too, but I think the recording is more reliable, especially if we speak clearly. So I propose we go into goal 3 and take 30 seconds and pick your number 1. Tom, you want to start? Are you ready? Did I not give you
Another 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. I think I would stay with one of the ones that I had marked already, which is provide real-time traveler information for all people using the transportation system.
I think I'm also gonna stick with my original one, which is integrate city development information updates into major routing providers. This is harkening back to the survey, which I know, like, we should put a big caveat on that, but, in that, people identified that, like, main things they use are Google Maps, Waze, et cetera, and so I see this as plugging into that response. A close second was the first one, the adapt and automate information to a variety of media, because I see those two as very similar.
How about you, Jerry?
I was going with support centralized systems that provide the following local traveler information. Advance, that's number 4, advance in real-time information about construction activities and work zones and real-time incident information.
I
So that seemed to be more specific, I thought, than number one and number 2. So that's why I chose it.
I would go with integrating the city developed information and updates into major route providers. But the coordinate with regional agencies to provide regional travel information is pretty compelling as well. What would that look like more specifically?
Are you asking me, Isabel?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I was taking notes. So what's your question, Julian? Sorry.
What I was saying that coordinating with regional agencies to provide regional travel information seems pretty compelling as a first place option, but what would that look like more specifically?
Something I could think about, if instead of having to go through different sources of information, like WASDA to see how SR900 traffic is doing, or the city to look at what the city's signals are doing. So providing a way to have everything on a single source, and
So they
It
get
would all-
feeds from other
Yes.
sources, but they would be presented, served up to an Issaquah traveler.
it's like having everything on a single, thinking about it simply, it's like having everything on a single source of information.
It's like looking at Google Maps, right?
Yeah.
And you get some sort of travel update and it tells you the fastest way you can get somewhere
Through all the different routes. Yes.
through all the different routes.
Yeah, I mean, I think centralization, centralization ideas that are in a couple of these objectives is kind of tricky because I don't think a lot of people are going to be seeking out different travel information metrics or data that are not already what they already use in Google Maps, Waze, whatever
That's
they
true.
use. So, yeah, I think that still makes my first place.
Okay, so I'm last here, then I'm gonna say integrate city developed information updates into major routing providers, Google, Waze. And I think that people are used to using those, and if the city can do something with technology to make those choices better, then I think that's a good use of money and technology. Okay.
We learned about the first goal.
This is great, we're getting there.
Okay, goal number 4, are we ready to move on to goal number 4? Okay, everybody take 1 minute.
Pumpkin. Okay, number 5.
Sorry, on the first objective for goal number 4, when it says existing infrastructure, does that mean capital infrastructure, or does it mean technology infrastructure, right?
Yes,
Okay.
existing technology.
No, sorry, number 1
Technology.
Yes.
and number
Yes.
2, then, okay.
Yes, whenever we, for these purposes, when we talk about infrastructure, we are talking about existing technology.
Okay,
The current wiring cameras.
It's got an eraser on it.
Anybody else want the last cookie?
What?
I'll share it with anybody. If anybody wants to have.
I'm good. Okay, Jared, I'm gonna let Erica go first, and then you're next, or we'll go the other way if you want. Are you
Oh.
ready? You don't look like you're ready.
Oh, I am.
Oh, you are? Okay, Erica, go first.
Okay.
I said deploy systems with a high benefit to cost ratio with emphasis on cost effective equipment to add the greatest value possible. Because for me that the goal explicitly says develop and deploy, and some of these were, I mean, I guess they say deploy, but they sounded more like, oh, and let's maintain what we have, and that's cost effective. But I guess if launching new technology versus maintaining the old, to me, is kind of need to answer what we're doing first before I can confidently pick this, but I'm going with what I said.
And I chose the same option as Erica. So, and I was thinking, oh, well, you could do a benefit cost ratio for existing systems along with new systems. So I felt that was the best described objective on goal 4. So I'm going with that one.
Thanks.
I would have to say deploy systems that are integrated with future transportation infrastructure improvements. Because I have to be consistent from my goal 1, talk about technology being better for upstream stuff, reducing conflicts. And so if we're deploying those systems, we have to keep an eye to the future about what some hard infrastructure would do to reduce those crashes, combined with technology to prevent the crash in the first place. So tying those together, I think would be good in a technology project basis.
Julian, was that 1 or 2? Sorry.
That was 3.
Okay.
Okay, so I said deploy systems with a high benefit to cost ratio. With so many options and so many different ways to spend our ITS dollars, it seems like aiming at the lowest hanging fruit. For any benefit that's on our list of benefits, I think would be worth pursuing as we move forward with an ITS emphasis initiative.
But Julian does have a point about that's not.
That was also on my list of top 3, just for the record. That was on my top 3, but if I had to pick one,
This is probably the hardest one I struggled with because I could pick any one of them. But I think I ended up, what I would say my number 1 would be deploy sustainable ITS infrastructure that can be maintained long-term. I chose that one, but I think it kind of addresses some of the other ones that I would also could have easily chosen. Or use the existing system as much as we can and coordinate to other cities. For me, it's, I look at cost-effective ITS infrastructure. I mean, any one of them could be, but I thought if we deploy, it could be using the existing as well. It could be maintained, and I think the thing that got me on that was something that we can maintain long-term. So it's like thinking and planning about the future, what's going to be used for as opposed to just what's going to be used for. The long-term is what drew me to that.
Does anyone have anything they want to add or change their mind after we got all the way around? Right. Ready to move on to number 5. Let's take a minute. I think this is shorter, so we'll maybe not need quite as much time. Sure, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the last one. Participate in collaborative opportunities to align with region-wide ITS vision following the completion of this planning effort. So if you collaborate with other agencies with technology, then you would be sharing all your resources too. So that makes sense. Me.
I think for me, it'd be promoting the interoperability of the systems and devices to effectively manage the system. That's kind of a specific thing that goes into integrating our system with the regional partners. So when we're talking about specific investments, it should be towards promoting that end of interoperability.
Okay, so I got to the word interoperability, and I do know what that means, at least some definitions of it, but it's when I realized that I don't have enough information, and this is the one that I wrote a note. It felt to me like this really needs to be deferred to what staff, experts, consultants, whatever. I just don't have enough information to know what we should be doing, and it doesn't feel value driven to me. It feels or strategy. It feels more like you need to know a lot about all this and what everyone's doing before you can pick one of these. Is how I felt. So I'm going to take a pass on that one.
Which one?
On goal 5,
Okay.
I would defer to whatever the experts that do this for a living.
Yeah, I was throwing off at the interoperability word. Catch all for kind of do kind of what the last one does. So it's between that and the last one, I chose the last one, just participate in collaborative and opportunities to align with region-wide ITS. But I was throwing off a little bit following the completion of this planning effort. Why not do it during it?
Yes.
As opposed to, okay,
Yes.
we're done, what are you guys doing? As opposed to, like, what are you guys doing? Okay, we're gonna incorporate that into ours. So, if I could change that word, rather than doing it during the completion, but during the development of it, I would go with the last one.
It's a good segue into what I chose was number 2, continue to coordinate and integrate projects with other agencies. Because to me that seemed very similar to the last one, but I didn't like the time, caps, I guess, of what the last one had, and versus this one is continued coordinate just right off the bat. And that's why I chose it, because that seems more cost effective.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like this one pings on our public comment of, hey, are you guys integrating with WashDOT, et cetera? That seems like it's a topic of interest.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? Change the line? No?
I'm gonna switch to
guess-
I
Erica's.
think I might go
Can
with Erica.
Oh,
We're
going with Erica.
interoperability.
During it.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Like what kind of investment? Are there like hard investments that you could think of that could come from that goal, from that objective?
Something like to make sure our systems can work together with others. And to give you an example, let's say we have signals of, we have SR900, we have a combination between WashDOT and city signals. And right now, there is no way for us to have a combined system that we can provide coordination between all the signals because we have different systems. If we if we kind of align our operations and our technology into the same, so we can speak the same language, we could provide a better service for the entire corridor.
And would that capital investment be something like getting someone to put those two languages together and have them communicate in that
Yes.
way, or would it be using that software, or what would that look like?
I can think of different ways, but we'll be getting more into the details, but something that Bellevue has done is taking over WashDOT signals. And I know that that is a conversation or a point that has been brought up in other or previous conversations, but that's a way where, okay, since both systems can communicate with each other, then the city of Bellevue took over the operation of WashDOT, of some of WashDOT's signals on a corridor. But that's not technology oriented, that is a technique, a solution to get into that interoperability. Where to keep the same, like WashDOT would operate theirs and us, for the technology to speak the same language, they'll have to connect or interact with each other, kind of need to be compatible with each other.
Yeah, I think I'll still stick with the internal.
Okay. So you're not changing your mind?
I'm not changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did
I
someone else
convinced
say they
me
were
more.
changing their mind?
They said they were changing.
Yeah, we're
Alright.
changing, okay. Awesome. Okay, well, there you go. That's called deliberation. We're doing it. Okay, so goal 6, monitor transportation performance measures.
So I have a question about number 3 before I make a decision on that one.
Okay.
So it says, so doesn't the county already have a geographical information system? So would the city of Issaquah input additional information to the GIS system?
Your question is to the county?
Yeah, number 3, goal 6, maintain a geographic information system database of transportation infrastructure, including ITS devices. Oh, so you would add your ITS devices to the King County's GIS system?
Well, that's not specific to King County or it's for ours. We do have geographical or GIS database, but what we are saying here is to keep that up to date, maintaining it, and add on to what we already have on the GIS, to add on our ITS devices.
Okay.
Julian looks ready. You're next. You start this next round.
I'll go with automate and develop efficient systems for collecting, storing, and analyzing transportation data performance measures. Just because I think that's kind of like it's like the most directly involved thing when it comes to having an investment made in that space. And so that's one of my choices because of that directness.
I'm going to change mine to automate. I think number 1 is very similar to that, but the one you just mentioned adds the concept of automating. So similar like remote sensing or other kinds of automated technology, so we'll go with that one.
Well, can make that 3, that's one of my 3 choices, but I don't like number one, as much as I'd like to automate develop efficient systems for collecting, storing, and analyzing.
I'm also going with automate and develop efficient systems. I agree that it seems similar to the first one. Also just in general, some of these were like, I could do like a hard no on. I'm just very wary of when it comes to data privacy for folks and making sure that's all tip top and not being sold off to people that might not keep it safe.
Okay, well, rule number 6 is unanimous. So,
We got so good at this, wasn't it?
I think that we don't have the luxury of prioritizing our goals, but I think you've heard a lot about what we think is important. And I guess what I would like to do is ask the report to make some general comments about some themes that you heard. And even if we didn't have time to reach a consensus, some of the things that caused us a little anxiety, points that were made that were kind of meta points. And I'm assuming this is gonna end up being a report that you prepare for the November 8th meeting. And I'll just remind everybody that when things are going to council that have tabs, summary of tabs feedback, we now have a system where they send it to Julian and me and we take a quick look and comment. That was something we discussed, you might remember, a couple months ago. And we did that the last time and it worked pretty well. We responded pretty quickly and didn't have a whole lot to say, but a little bit. I think we added a couple, I don't remember exactly, but that, yeah, so we'll be looking to see if you, I know it's not gonna be easy, but to just try to capture some of the things that were high level that we were wrestling with so they can accelerate their wrestling.
Yes.
And with that, I would suggest that we move on, and poor Thomas has been waiting for 2 hours now. And we do have a.
oh, look at us, smile on his face.
And we do need to take a couple minutes.
Still smiling.
He's smiling. I do, Thomas, I don't know if you think we can get through this, but we did take an awful long time, and I think this was, this order was on purpose because there is a meeting on November 4th. And I don't know if we can get through it all, and if we don't, what we would do about that, but I'm not opposed to making meetings longer than we said, but I still like to end them on time because I think that it puts people in an awkward position where they might have to leave early and not get to finish the discussion, so I would like us to finish on time.
But I think 8:30.
I'm sorry?
You mean like 8:30? That was tossed out.
I meant the 8:30, the
Yeah.
new time, yeah, I just don't like people to be surprised and expected to be able to have to leave and have to choose between a commitment and finishing the discussion. And you guys had said you could stay till 8:30, but I don't want it, I still want us to finish by 8:30. I don't mind giving people notice about a long meeting. I don't like making a meeting go longer.
Right.
Because I don't think it's fair. Unless we always go over and then people can plan for that too. But anyway, then people won't volunteer for the board because then it always goes over. So there's that too. Isabel, was there anything else you wanted to say about that, or should we go ahead and turn over to Thomas?
Oh, yes, we can turn it over to Tom. Thank you.
That was hard, but we hopefully got some information by the time we got really going. Okay. Turning it over to you, Thomas.
Alrighty. Well, good evening. I will try to move through this very quickly. And again, yeah, my name is Thomas Valdrez, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner at Issaquah. So tonight, I will be providing an update on the transit study, which kicked off last month. I'll then walk through the study's proposed community engagement plan and ask the board for some feedback. Lastly, I'll conclude my presentation by providing a preview of what's coming down the pike. So before I begin, just wanted to share these 2 questions. So question 1 is, does the proposed community engagement plan meet the goal of engaging with diverse voices from the community especially those with a higher dependency on transit services. And question 2 is, are there any additional community interests or audiences that we're missing from the key audiences and stakeholders list that's been provided to you in attachment B of your packet? So this would be item 4B, attachment B. So as I go through this presentation, just keep those questions in mind. So where are we at with this project? We, again, just kicked off the study. So in August, we selected DKS Associates to lead the development of the study. And in September, we kicked this off. And as you can see from this timeline, after 2 major phases, we'll be ready to complete this project along with the comp plan update in 2024. So this project team is currently developing the existing conditions memo, which is phase 1.1, that deliverable. And to do that, we'll be consolidating local and regional planning documents, evaluating existing transit operational performance and service delivery, and determining the existing commuting patterns. So just giving a baseline of how things are in Issaquah as it relates to transit. The draft community engagement plan, which is highlighted here, has now been developed, and I'm here to ask for your feedback on this. So at a very high level, the proposed community engagement plan includes engaging with stakeholder groups representing diverse voices, interests, and needs, utilizing online multilingual communications platforms to share information, educate the community, and receive feedback. We'll also be hosting a multilingual community open house and several pop-up events at existing community gatherings. We'll be utilizing the city's boards and commissions, like we're doing today, to gather feedback at project milestones. And lastly, we'll be working closely with other invested public agency staff, such as King County Metro, Sound Transit, and the Puget Sound Regional Council. This is just to make sure that the content and the deliverables that we're developing is accurate, it's practical, it's very robust in its development, and most importantly, that it's going to be useful to us. So a full list of the plan's key audiences and stakeholders can be found in attachment B of agenda item 4B. And to summarize the very high-level groups of the folks on this list, the key audiences will be current and potential transit users, community, businesses, and economic development interests, public agency representatives, seniors, youth, the mobility challenged, and the general community at large. Moving on to the online communications. This study will have its own dedicated webpage on the city's website. This is going to serve as the primary source of project information. The website is going to include general information and educational materials on what we're doing, staff contacts, project and meeting documents, links to surveys and other interactive community feedback tools, and other ways that people can participate. The plan also includes having the city use its social media accounts. This is to share project information, promote events and other participation opportunities, and to receive community feedback. Some of the examples of the social media accounts include Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, and Twitter. These are the ones I'm aware of. I'm actually not sure what else we have, but those are on the top of my mind. The project will also use email newsletters and email meeting invites, just to remind people of events. So going into the pop-up events and the open house. So these events, the project team would be there to gather feedback, pose questions to the community, and work with participants to reimagine what it means to be transit supportive in our community. Very importantly, these events would have translation services for Spanish and Mandarin speaking attendees. And the primary goals of this would be to have representation from diverse voices, people, and interests, with additional outreach to the stakeholder groups that we have listed. We also hope to provide many ways for people to participate who are unable to actually attend that meeting. We also hope to promote it widely through the community and to incorporate community feedback directly into the planning process. Lastly, I wanted to highlight the fact that we'll be using the city boards and commissions, and this would be throughout the entire project life cycle. So as was mentioned at the June meeting, the TAB will be the primary board that would be working on this. The TAB will be asked to provide regular feedback at project milestones. We also hope to come to the TAB and just give general updates on where the project is going so that you all are aware of that, as well as invite the TAB to attend the community outreach events that I just mentioned. Secondary to the TAB would be the Economic Vitality Commission, the Equity Board, the Human Services Commission, and the Planning Policy Commission. These secondary boards and commissions would also be provided regular updates on how the project is going. And the administration would also be seeking feedback from these boards at specific times where their expertise would be helpful. So an example of this in practice will be the Link Light Rail planning document. So for this example, the proposal would be that the Economic Vitality Commission and the Planning Policy Commission might be able to provide some good feedback as the Link Light Rail planning document, which goes into instances of potential station location, and there would be economic development and land use planning implications. So they would be able to provide good feedback in that instance. And so in practice, feedback heard from these groups would then be shared with the TAB, who would then provide their own feedback on top of that. And then that would be sent to the Mobility and Infrastructure Council Committee, who would then have the final review. So just a process here, and you can kind of imagine it as like a pyramid. And the third group, which is all other boards and commissions, we would want to keep them informed throughout the planning process. We would also invite them to participate at regular community events to provide feedback using the other methods that will be available to the community. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you very much for listening to this. And if we could maybe go through both of these questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as you consider these.
Thank you, Thomas. Do you guys have any questions on his presentation?
The the two languages selected for outreach beyond English, like Mandarin and Spanish, are those like the top two identified languages spoken in Issaquah outside of English? Or how did, I'm just curious the process to come into those two.
Yeah, that's a great question. They are. So we went to the latest census data. We looked at all the residents of Issaquah. We found that obviously English is the most widely spoken, but second to that was, I believe, Mandarin, and then third was Spanish.
Thanks.
I would go into the second question there. I think what we're missing in this stakeholder group, particularly for mobility, is some kind of bike advocacy group as well. When it comes to safe bike storage at the future light rail station, that might be useful. Integrating bike mobility options into getting to those transit centers would be useful. And so I think adding, Cascade or Washington Bikes or anything, or any associated group would be kind of useful to add in that stakeholder group.
I agree with
That's
those
good.
two, as well as, basically, I know we have some bike shops in town. I don't know if they have like a network, right, that they would plug in. I don't know what that looks like, partnering with those businesses and using that as like an outreach base in addition to Cassie Bicycle Club or like other bike groups. Seems like a local connection there.
But, generally, when it comes to this community engagement plan, when we're talking about surveys, it's tricky because, I don't know how much outreach we did for this other survey that we were just presented with, but you just have to make sure that it's not overrepresenting the traditional groups who might be taking those. And so I don't know what it would require, but I do think Issaquah's community engagement plans do need reworking. They do need a revamp because what we're doing is
I
not
feel like
enough.
every agency is faced with the same problem. We're not alone, but we are, I feel like we're pretty committed to that, so I totally agree with you. I was just wondering, the one specific thing I had, the only specific thing, because I don't know the answer of how to do that, and, it's not only they're hard to reach, but they're also, both in people that are transit dependent, people that are bike dependent, for transportation are almost, they're gonna be busier, they're gonna have less free time, they're gonna not be able to, they're not gonna hang around, sit around filling out surveys. But I was just wondering whether we were allowed to, I did see something in there about the Issaquah School District, and I think it would be really useful to target, take some measure of the population of the school, whether it's, highest incidence of free, reduced lunch, or just the, if the census blocks line up with the school boundaries or whatever, some kind of proxy for trying to reach out to the schools that have the most, traditionally underrepresented. And I mean, stick things in kids' backpacks. I mean, I don't know what they allow us to do, but I know they have newsletters and such, but I bet they have the same challenges getting their parents, but at least it's one step closer. So I was just wondering about an extra level of effort to the elementary schools that serve the most lower income populations as an extra layer of effort, if that's possible.
Are we allowed to offer any kind of incentive for this, of like, hey, if you take this, and like we can, throw some change in your org account or something like that? Like, I mean, that seems pretty complicated, but I don't, like in college, psych students would need to do their surveys, and so they'd be like, hey, you get a $5 gift card, you're in a raffle for a $5 gift card. Like, I don't honestly know how much incentives like that work for capturing more people. I think for me, it's more about like a time thing of like, if it's gonna take me 30 minutes, I'm not doing it, versus if it's gonna take me 5, yeah, I can do it. And also taking into account survey fatigue as well. How many surveys are happening at the same time? Like, the city is pushing out more and more. I feel like people are gonna be less likely to take them if there's like 30 different surveys out in a given year versus like, all right, we're gonna put all of our energy into the transit one, and like get the maximum amount of people to take it.
Well, they're not all surveys, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I think it's a great question, and I think that's, if we all agree, maybe kind of consensus, like give that feedback back to them that if it's possible to incent somehow, whether they're open houses and you can provide childcare or bus pass, some way to get there. I don't know. I'm not the expert on how to get people to participate in these things, but I think that what I'm hearing everybody say is that we want the city to invest in that. And
We turn out a local celebrity. I know there are Mariners that used to live in the town. But
Who uses transit?
yeah.
It's generally better to also try to get to where people are at, of course, and that's part of the engagement plan, but there have to be, you have to focus on helping people get to where the staff are, and having the staff go out to the actual community. To use the engagement methods most here, but I do think we have to try our best to not do the same old of getting these surveys and their demographics, those specific demographics. But yeah, it's
The open
tough.
house idea, don't you think the open house idea is a good idea though? But it depends upon where it is and what time, maybe they need a few of those.
It's that, or if it's possible to just go where the community is already existing, right? If you're like, I don't have a good example for that, but if, there's already a regularly occurring meeting that a certain community is going to at a given time, and then asking, which I know there's, like coming in as government to a community saying, hey, can we, commandeer a portion of this meeting for a bit because we have something important to say and want your participation in it. Like, I don't quite know what the ethics of that are, but
You mean like visiting, Erica, like visiting the senior center?
right, yeah. I mean,
Perhaps.
that's a city entity, I believe, so I don't know how tricky that would
Like
be.
the
but-
Elks Club's monthly meeting or something.
Sure,
or
yeah,
like that.
exactly,
Something
things like that, yeah. And then especially targeting like culturally diverse groups. Like I have a whole list here. I didn't know if we were sharing this yet of like for at least the second question of like people that groups that I think we should add onto the list. I'm happy to just email this. But like, it's not in Issaquah, but Centro Cultural Mexicano in Redmond. I don't know how many folks that go to those events and things, which are primarily Latino. I don't know how many of those folks live within our city boundaries that we're looking at and would be, people we want to be taking this transit survey or showing up to an event or hearing it or whatever. Even though that's not in Issaquah, but it's like a community hub for a certain community.
What was the name of it?
Centro Cultural Mexicano, not to be confused with El Centro in Seattle.
Okay.
But like I know the people that, the executive directors of it, so.
Yeah, this is all great feedback. I'd be happy to accept a list of other organizations if you have specific ones, or if you have just overarching groups that are missing from this list. We can, staff and our project team can dive into that and do our own independent research.
Okay, yeah, I'll send over this list just to not take up more time going down, but I think I should though mention, I saw some on the list that you had provided, but just like overarchingly, like anecdotally, I see a lot of East Indian population within Issaquah, and so I think also like hitting that, I know like and there's various languages that population speaks in addition to English, but I don't know if that would be worth, like I didn't see that within the two languages other than English selected, like that community necessarily represented, so I'm not sure. And I just don't know like the numbers, right? Like the number of like population of folks that identify as such, but I don't know.
Yeah, one of the sort of considerations is that we were really looking, we wanted to lock in on groups that had limited English proficiency, primarily. So, many folks speak multiple languages. So if the groups already do speak English, we sort of assume that we can cover our bases in that regard. That is a great question though, and a good comment to consider. We really want to open this up to anybody that wants to provide feedback. So yeah, any way that we can get people involved, we're trying to do it with this project.
Does anyone else have any additional feedback? I feel like we're supportive of generally the direction. We just want to make sure that we, like Julian said, try our hardest to keep, it's definitely elusive to get the trans-dependent folks, but anyone else have anything to add? Thomas, do you feel like you got what you needed from this group?
Yeah, maybe if I could just do a recap here. So the question one is, I mean, do you think that this plan is meeting the goal of engaging diverse voices, especially those that are, transit dependent service recipients, transit riders?
Are you asking us the question again to summarize?
Yeah.
Just that what you're hearing is that as best as we know how,
Okay.
and that we don't have any better ideas, but that we recognize that it's really difficult and want to encourage. Yeah, but we don't have any specific, I mean, aside from what you heard, some of the specific ideas, I think the answer is generally yes, to the extent that we just know it's a very difficult goal.
Yeah, we have to revamp or go really hard at trying to help people get to the open houses and these community listening
Yes.
sessions. And then we also have to have staff try their hardest at connecting with the various interest groups or community groups.
With the addition of well, I guess that's question number 2. I guess,
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the goals with sharing information, educate the community, which is good. It's a great goal. Incorporate feedback directly in the planning process. So these are all good. And options for those who can't attend. And those are all good goals.
I think the answer is generally yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then the second question, it sounds like potentially there are some individual groups that could be incorporated into this list, but is the board's consensus that that overall these umbrellas of groups are sort of hitting the mark?
Oh, it's really good to me.
Yeah,
With the addition of the bicycling?
with the addition of the biking, advocacy groups, and then also the cultural groups as well. That may be mostly out of the city, but who can still provide important feedback.
Yeah, this is very good feedback. This is exactly what I was looking for. So thank you very much.
Thank you for waiting.
No worries, happy to do it.
See, look at this. Wow,
You didn't think we could do it, did you, Jerry?
5 minutes.
Okay, so with that, it sounds like we're concluding item 4B. And ready to move on to 5A, the board work plan. Followed by
Yes,
the staff report.
We do have something to share. So it's been a while since we weren't able to provide items on our work plan, but we have now a couple of things that will be coming for the next 2 meetings near as we approach the end of the year. First one would be the public water street standards. That would be brought up in November, and Thomas will be bringing on that topic to us. And also, we will be introducing the TIP, but in the sense of the process, how the process of selecting the TIP projects will go. And then after that, we will continue on December with the TIP process. We estimate that we would need to expand of 2 meetings. And the Northwest Sammamish non-motorized project, we are finally ending the year with the introduction of that project in December. And for the next couple of meetings, just so you know, we might end up getting additional time as well as we did today. And that's something we would like to get your input on. I'll stop sharing.
As long as I know in advance that we're going till 8:39, wherever it be, then it works out for me.
Yeah, it's okay with me.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to move on to the staff report?
Oh, yes, for the staff report, we only have one thing. We started the construction of the Newport pedestrian bridge and race intersection. If you have been able to drive on Newport Way between Oakers and the King County Trailhead, we have started that project. There is an existing, there is a temporary signal for the traffic control there. The construction is ongoing and it's moving very quickly. That project will help with reducing the speeds with the race intersection and also providing more direct connection to the trailhead with another crosswalk with flashers and devices.
Well, when will it be done? Depends on the weather.
Yes, it has been ongoing really fast since we started. But now that weather is going to start, it could be extended through early next year. But it's mostly because of the leading time of electrical parts and stuff like that, and the pavement marking as well. But I would say that the heaviest load of the project is moving along pretty quickly.
Anything more on the staff report?
No, that's all we have for the staff report.
Okay, I do have a couple of items on the chair report. A piece of paper here, my chair report. Oh, here it is, okay. Just want to remind everybody about recruitment. Right now, we are 8 people. It takes 5 to make a quorum because we should be 9 positions and 2 alternates. So we're down to 8 on this board, regular members. So recruitment will be, it'll still be handled annually. I just wanted to remind everybody.
Did some drop out or?
Joseph's at college.
Joseph and Janie. And then one of those was filled by Jerry. Yes. And so then that vacates all alternates and leaves us with 1 short. So just want to remind you guys of that. There's another thing, and that's the next item is that the Mobility Infrastructure Committee has a regular meeting the second Tuesday. And I did go to the one in October. That was really useful. I do have a new and standing ongoing commitment, so it's not something I'll be able to attend each time. I actually think it's really useful to have that rotate anyway. And so it's certainly not required, but if we had a volunteer to go on November 8th, when they transmit the information we just spent an hour and 45 minutes talking about, if there was one person that would want to go, I went in person and I found it really useful. I don't know a lot of the council members, but just getting to know them a little bit better and getting to know the committee. There's just 3 of them. It's really worthwhile. So is there anybody that wants to volunteer to do that?
I'm gonna be in South Carolina. so
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I am double checking to make sure this is a Tuesday. Oh, that is election day.
It's election day.
It's-
You're gonna need something to keep your mind
That's
busy.
true, yeah, and again, I don't work on that side, I work on the, but what time does it start?
It's like 6 o'clock, I think.
6 for 2 hours, goes to 8 for?
It's more like an hour and a half, isn't it?
Depends
on how many go.
Okay.
Okay, tentative, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can confirm that later,
Okay.
right? But technically, no, I don't have anywhere to be, but
Oh.
I'm guessing you might.
Yeah. So if you guys could just kind of keep that in mind, the second Tuesday, and maybe we could send a calendar or something and just kind of maybe formalize that. It's certainly not required, but I did think it's really useful, and unless they end up changing that date, I just won't be able to attend. And then the last thing I have is that we would like to next month discuss the possibility of whether, and we would entertain the possibility of moving this evening to the regular meeting time for this board. One of our members is unable to attend, and it actually works a little better for me to do it not on Thursday, but we do have the authority to change the regular date. We have, she did check with the clerk, and there are a couple dates, second Monday, fourth Monday, and fourth Wednesday are available as alternatives, and I don't want to get any answers right now. The idea is that you get a chance to think about that, you'll get that, and that will be an agenda item in your packet, and then we'll have some time to think about it. If we can't, if it's not feasible, then we won't move it.
That's the first, third Monday? Or
Second Monday, fourth Monday, fourth Wednesday,
and third Wednesday?
fourth Wednesday.
Okay, so fourth Monday and fourth Wednesday.
Second Monday, fourth Monday, fourth Wednesday. I personally much prefer the Wednesdays versus Mondays for a couple of reasons, one of which it seems like a lot of holidays fall on Mondays.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, we don't want to do
Also,
that.
to not, even though we have it, I don't necessarily pack it for the weekend.
Right, it gives you
I
so much
have to do
time.
it during the week before.
But to be clear, one person's schedule can't drive the community, but to drive the whole board. But we do have that authority if it's all the same to everyone and it
If
makes
everyone
it.
can handle it.
Exactly,
that's
and it
fine.
means we would, because we have recruitment, board, it's not like we have a long line of people, ready to fill in or anything. So if you can, that'd be great, and you don't have to say no. In fact, I prefer you don't, that way you can think about it a little bit, and then, it'll be on the agenda next month, right?
Yeah,
So
the last time, didn't they do Google Docs? We had a little vote.
we can just do that in real time in the meeting, and we're constrained by, there's only 3 choices, but you're right, we could do it. Well, we can't really have a discussion offline. We're not really allowed to do that offline anyway. We can't, that's a virtual meeting.
That was a virtual thing? Oh, that's fine.
Maybe, actually, that's a really good question. Maybe that's an exception. I don't know.
Doesn't have to be open to the public, and that way we do something offline, it's not public.
She's saying that we've had like a Google or like a,
2 years ago.
what do you call it when you have a
Google.
a doodle poll, thank you, that's what
Doodle
it was.
poll, that's what it was.
Yes, I don't know if a doodle poll constitutes a meeting.
I can ask.
But-
Before the meeting. But I can
Or,
ask
but
that.
as long as we have it in the agenda, then we can look up our schedules.
Exactly, that's the whole
Ahead of-
purpose, is give people time to digest it and then come to the meeting and make sure
We're not missing.
no one's on the
something.
spot, no one's like forgotten something on the calendar or whatever, so.
Yeah.
That does conclude the chair report. We are a couple minutes behind, but are there any other business or announcements? Okay.
Thank you for saying the.
Nice job on the house, man.
Pardon?
Nice job on the house demo.
Oh, I didn't write it, but I did.
I think we presented it,
John.
at least that's what I read there.
I was there on hand and I did make remarks. Yeah, John Larson Friend did he did the presentation, but yeah, it was good, Thank you. Well, good, I think that means that we're adjourned.
Yes.
Thank you for the extra time, thank you
Thank
for the
you.
muffins. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank
It was
you.
delicious.
Ooh, I did good.
To make them.